What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mask and Health Solutions podcast, where I am joined by Kosta Telegadas, who's going to give us a lowdown on things that I love to talk about. And it's one of those things that when it comes to life, a lot of people disregard it until they get hit upside the head with the fact that, hey, they can't run anymore. They're too fat and they're just too out of shape, which is why Kosta here is going to break that down for us. We're going to jump into this discussion. And first and foremost, Kosta, man, how are you?
Brother, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Conrad.
Dude, this is a total blessing because, I mean, like I said before, when I looked at your profile, like strength and conditioning, these are all the things that honestly get me excited in life because me personally, I love that. But one of the things that I kind of want to get as far as background kind of goes is where did it all start for you?
Man, that's a loaded question. So we're going to take you way back to high school real quick. I was fortunate enough just because I was tall, lanky, and could shoot a basketball semi-well that I was able to play basketball at Douglas Southall Freeman High School in Richmond, Virginia in the United States, where I'm initially from. Initially, I was very tall, very weak. I wound up having a pretty bad low back injury for the freshman team that year in the middle of a practice and just kind of nursed it all the way through to the off season. In the off season, my public school was fortunate enough to have a really phenomenal strength and conditioning coach. They actually took from college at Arizona State into this public high school in Richmond, Virginia. Yeah, they had redone the whole high school, multi-million-dollar facility. It looks better than some professional or Division I level strength conditioning programs you'll see, especially on the university athletics side. From there, he worked closely with me. I got really top-tier treatment and care and coaching, and that inspired me as I went off to university to go get my bachelor's in exercise science. And about halfway through, I looked at, physical therapy. I had looked at personal training, which is more sales, physical therapy. They're doing the spider crawls up and down the wall. I'm like, man, this is boring. I don't like this. And so then I found strength and conditioning, and I kind of thought back to what made that time in that weight room special and where I wanted to go. And next thing you know, I was interning in the Longwood University Athletics Department weight room and did that for 2 years. Eventually graduated, interned at VCU in Richmond and Liberty University during both summers. So between junior and senior year, I was at Liberty. Between senior year and grad school, I was at VCU, and I was fortunate enough to get accepted into the strength and conditioning master's program in exercise physiology down at the University of Miami in Miami, Florida. So go Canes for all my Canes fans listening right now. It was fantastic, really fun opportunities there, learned a whole lot, got a chance and wiggled my way into a grad assistant position with the strength and conditioning staff there, sent guys to the NBA, professional volleyball, Olympic trials, some guys that got to help out with football for a while, went to the NFL. It was just an absolute blessing. Got out of grad school, saw a lot of up and downs in the athletics field from being at, low level, mid-major, and then Power 5 athletics in the university setting. Got into kind of the mode of connecting with a ton of other people and investigating some other sides of the field. So I met a couple guys that worked in strength and conditioning, whether it's for the military or fire departments or SWAT or police departments, first responder, and there were all these amazing opportunities coming up. So I had a chance to meet with them, and these are guys who have been at, Ohio State, Pittsburgh Pirates, Georgia, University of Georgia, right? Like Atlanta Falcons, big places. And they said, kid, I was always looking for the next job. The second I went to tactical strength and conditioning is what we call it now. It's been an absolute blessing. I work 40 hours a week. I'm on contract. The people I serve are either young studs, middle ground, mid-aged men who are either tenured or just want to lose weight, and older guys just need to get to the finish line. And so I was like, well, that's a lot more broader scope and a lot more people you can touch with your skill set, right? And having a dude who is, a 20 or 25-year vet in the game of strength and conditioning is incredible. To get that advice from early on. So I did it and I never looked back. Worked up with Exos up in Detroit, Michigan, big strength and conditioning place. Got some exposure to both the general population, professional athletics, and high school athletics, and a little bit with firefighters. And I just fell in love with the firefighters at that time. And then there was a specific contract down in Virginia where I wound up working with a very specific group down there, and then got promoted to come out to Europe to help out with some of the stuff I'm working with right now. So that's a long-winded version right there.
Yeah.
I'm also a strength and conditioning coach that loves to write, love to hop on podcasts. I have my own book out, training manual, and then I've contributed to several textbooks along the way. And I'm also the associate director of international business for the National Council on Strength and Fitness. So that's a little bit about me, where it all started, where we're at right now. So
It's super interesting because when I look at your background, it seems so eclectic, but it's almost like the perfect setup for where you're at now. It's
Hmm.
almost like you need to go through all of that, and then you look back and you're just like, oh shit, this all makes perfect sense for what I'm doing now, and it kind of has that beautiful tie-in. But one thing that kind of obviously stuck out to me, I'm like, dude, I want to dig into like some of these professional athletes and what they do different. But
Hmm.
overall, if you had to just take a look at the American population, what concerns you most when it comes to strength and conditioning?
As just far as just general American day to day on the
Gen
streets,
pop.
right?
Yeah.
Gen pop, overweight, can't run 1 mile without stopping, can't even do 10 push-ups in a row, yet alone 5 pull-ups. Just very stuff that you and I would consider very basic. But these people, if catastrophe struck or they couldn't run away from a threat, or even in some cases, if they trip and fall on the ground, they might tear their ACL.
Yeah.
Just some very traumatic injury that could have just been a small acute injury if they were just stronger, more resilient, and better conditioned.
Interesting. Yeah, because
And
it seems like, yeah, it's like it's almost like it's at a decline, but there's so many different factors that kind of play into it, which is one of those things where it almost seems like what came first, the chicken or the egg, the bad nutrition, the bad habits. Like
Mhm.
there's so many different things that just kind of play into it, right?
Well, and what's crazy is being over in Europe now, the biggest thing we look at is food. Let me tell you,
Hmm.
man, it is, I lost probably close to 6 kilos when I first moved over here. And
Damn.
for the American audience listening, since they don't use kilograms, it's about
Yeah,
12,
13.
12 and a half pounds, 13
Hmm.
pounds, right? So that was significant. I was like, whoa. And that was just from literally cleaning up the diet. Not much had changed, right? You're eating some rich carbs, you're eating some good protein, but it's wild, especially that Americans think carbs are the issue. Carbs are the issue. No, bad
Yeah.
carbs are the issue. You still can eat fruit, vegetables, and a bunch of other great stuff, but it is astounding to me how many Americans are just overweight and not fit for anything. And obviously, you and I both know that's going to lead to cardiovascular issues. It's going to lead
Hmm.
to heart disease. It's going to lead to a number of factors for cancer. Man, the list goes on and on. So that's going to be
Yeah.
the several big things to kind of wrap up that question for you, man. It's scary to look at when you come over and see another country and how they live too.
Yeah, and stat wise, I remember reading about that where it said that I think 70% of Americans are now unfit for duty. And that to me, I found kind of shocking because I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of people that can't do a lot of basic training, let alone like the spec ops kind of side of things, right? Where it's like, okay, you got to be a completely different animal. But it almost seems like the mindset is almost what's missing. So one thing that I did want to get your opinion on is when you're training a guy and it's strength and conditioning, whether you're training them for football, whether you're training them for something out in the field, whatever that may be, how do you get somebody's mindset right when it comes to strength and conditioning? Because that's got to be one of the fundamental pillars, I think, where it's like, okay, you got to get your mind right. You got to get it dialed in. Is there anything they use to like anchor a guy in or get him set up so that mentally set up for success?
The first thing is find their pain point. What is going to be the biggest thing we can fix today or in the long run that is giving you the most pain right now? And that could be for maybe someone who's a firefighter, right? That could be like a ton of low back and shoulder issues. You start taking care of those and those start feeling better and they can get back doing what they need to do on the job or in the squadron. That's great. For someone, maybe it is, they went through a divorce and their wife left them if they're a man, as an
Oh wow.
example. You have a guy lose 50 pounds. He now feels like a new man going out into the world. And, you know, he will go into his next interactions more confidently, whether that's in business or it's in, dating, whatever that may be. The other
Hmm.
thing I would say is convey to them and say, hey man, what's your why? Why are you here?
Yeah.
Why do you want to be here with me training right now at, you know, 0600 in the morning, right? That's a great thing to talk about because some of these sessions that I run can be early. Some of them can be later in the day. It just depends.
Yeah. And I guess when you have that clarity, you almost know why you're doing this. If you
Hmm.
don't have that objective data, and I guess in your case, as a guy that's coaching them to success, it's like, I got to know why you're here first and foremost before we can do anything. Because if somebody's just here in a roundabout way, kind of like, well, I'm just here to, yeah, I'm forced to be here because my heart isn't where
Hmm.
it needs to be, and I'm just barely, I'm just trying to get healthier. You almost have to know that too, so you can meet them at where they're at currently.
100%. And that's where we, come to scalable options or even just basic programming or, So many coaches, and this is kind of my pet peeve with the strength and conditioning industry, we've let science outweigh common sense. So
Dude.
they're going to go in and say, oh man, you need this certain type of unilateral exercise and targeting these muscle groups and this kind of loading pattern. It's like, yeah, could a lunge or a step up have just done the exact same thing, right? Like, like there's a
Yeah,
time place
dude.
for variation, there's a time place for specificity, but if they can't even do a body weight lunge, split squat, step up correctly, maybe we should focus on
Mhm.
the basics first. So doing the basics right is going to be fantastic for them.
100%. And that's kind of one thing that I saw when I was a trainer at the gym. There's a dude that knew everything in the fucking textbook and he kept on saying everything. Like, he's like, well, if we focus on the specificity of the iliopsoas and blah, blah. I'm like, dude, just speak
Yeah.
in English. And it was really annoying too, because it was more like, I don't know
Mhm.
why he would talk like that. It was more like a flex to
Mhm.
everybody around him. And it's like, everything
Yeah.
is science based data. And I'm like, dude, first of all, you're not even strong enough to, to do some weighted pull ups or whatever. And,
Mhm.
and, the other side of it is just like, dude, you're talking to another human being, which is why I think it's so relevant. They just communicate in a way that's simple, right? Like, keep it simple, stupid. I live by that principle, and I find that it
Yeah.
works best for me. And especially when it comes to explaining some of these more complicated subjects, you almost need to just speak to people in plain English and make it easier. And to your point, yeah, let's just call it a step up. Let's not
Yeah.
call it like a unilateral hip flexor engaged posterior chain movement or something,
Overhead,
right?
contralateral,
Yeah.
ipsilateral. You can put any scientific term to it. The biggest thing is, hey man, like if I'm doing I don't know, like a contralateral lunge, you're going to hold the weight in the right hand. You're going to do a step up with the left leg. Boom, done.
Yeah.
Like if you can keep it simple for your audience or target population, whoever you're working with, they're going to buy it more, man. They don't care
Yeah.
about the science. They don't care as much as you do. And that's okay. They're not supposed to because they're
Yeah.
paying you for a result at the end of the day.
100%. And that's one thing that I also found interesting because when you had mentioned performance versus health, you got to make that differentiation. And that's one of those things that kind of ties back to the why as well, where I'm kind of saying,
Mhm.
okay, you need one to make sure you can kind of escalate to the other. When it comes to designing a program for somebody that's just trying to get healthy, how does it differ with somebody who's looking to perform like at their
Mhm.
absolute best?
So let's start with performance and work back, right? I think that's the best
Hmm.
way to tackle this question. When we work on performance, we're looking at, hey man, we want to back squat double body weight, right? Or we want to run a
Yeah.
40-yard dash or vertical jump or a 5-10-5 pro agility drill. Okay, so how can we reverse engineer the program to better the results if you're not trained? Okay. Or if you're already trained and we do a pre-test, okay, where were you weak? We're going to train to bring up that weak spot and then, put some icing or some spinners on the car for those spots that work real well, right? That's
Yeah.
going to be the way I talk about performance. When you're looking at actual just, hey man, I just want to get healthy. Cool. We're going to look at cardiovascular health. We're going to look at body composition. We're going to look at, what's the goal you're training for? It could be just a variety of goals as opposed to a basketball player who needs to jump high, dribble, shoot, have good agility, be strong down in the paint, be able to box out and on their position, right? And those are more specific qualities to basketball. These are more specific qualities to health, what I previously mentioned, right?
Hmm.
Cardiovascular endurance, VO2 max, anaerobic threshold. Are you just generally powerful, right? And there's a ton of different stuff we can train for and fluctuate throughout the year.
100%. And when it comes to performance as well, do you ever find that you have to push people right to the brink of almost where you're flirting with injury or progression, or do you ever just kind of scale it back a bit?
Well, this is where education comes in, especially for the individuals that I serve and work with now, and even some people that I do online coaching with, right? You got to find out what works for them and then figure out if they need maybe a little pushing. Like if you tell a guy, hey, man, we're going to take this to 2 reps left in reserve or 3 reps left in reserve, right? Right. So we're going to have 2 to 3 reps left in the tank when you finish the set. And they probably had 5 left in the tank. Show them the video of it. Take a video of the
Mhm.
set. That could be an educational piece for someone that needs to be pushed more and they can see it, right? Maybe even hit them with a reminder of why they're there. Also, for the guy that, let's say he loves to do max effort work, throw some plates on the bar, maybe, 400-pound deadlift and he's not ready for it, right? We all know those people. And then,
Yep.
their
Yeah,
backs
I've seen
arching,
them.
their low backs pulling, their hips
Uh,
are, shaking shot side to
yeah.
side, like Shakira, right? It's a lot of different things, right? So taking a video of that, showing them, hey man, it's not supposed to move like this. You're going to risk to be set up for X, Y, Z injury, right? Or, hey man, you did really good on this. I want you to tighten this part up and we can change this part of your program. So it just depends on the client. And once again, it just comes down to relationship. Too many
Yeah.
coaches focus, like you said, with the Poindexter guy you mentioned earlier, right? He focuses on science and not on relationship building. Because the biggest thing, especially if you want to work with the populations, I work with and other coaches do, it's relationship first, science second. How can you help me
Yeah.
today? Why should I trust you? I've been doing X job, say the firefighter, for 20 years. I'm the chief of an entire department. Why should I trust you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you got to show up with the skills and be like, well, you know what, that nagging shoulder issue that you got might
Mm-hmm.
be related to your rotator cuffs being a little bit overworked. Like, let's focus on scaling it back and doing certain exercises that are not
Absolutely.
sexy. And I will
Yeah.
say to myself sometimes too, where you're just
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, cool, I got to do certain rotator cuff strengthening exercises, and just to make sure that I can kind of bulletproof them for the future. Which kind of leads me into something that you had
Mm-hmm.
mentioned as well, was training young people versus old people. Is it
Mm-hmm.
more an injury prevention type thing? How does it kind of look like? Progression, how does that kind of differ when you're training these two different populations?
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind, and I'm going to take you back to my own lifting career on this. I was a competitive power lifter, competitive Olympic weightlifter, right? I loved chasing the maxes. That is what I lived for, man, right? That was my thing.
Yep.
And, I could, squat and deadlift in the same day. I'd be really fatigued, but I could do it without having some kind of acute knee injury or maybe some low back issues or a tight hip flexor, whatever it may be. Now, as my body has gotten banged up from training and jujitsu and a ton of other stuff that I'm doing now,
Oh, yeah.
I cannot recover from those injuries. Like, let's say I was on a squat and maybe my hip shifted a little to the right and I came up. I used to not feel anything when I was younger, squatting 365. I do that now, that hip's gonna be on fire for a little bit. Let me know, hey bro, you ain't 21 no more. You ain't 22. You're
Yeah.
30. And that's okay. So I've had to tailor my training style, but specifically to answer your question, when I'm looking at the different populations, I look at what is their tenure. Okay, are they novice, intermediate, or advanced? And within that, how much can I push them? Especially if they're younger, right? And what is the goal? Does a quarterback for Alabama really need to be squatting 600 pounds? No, he doesn't, right? He just trying to sit 400 for speed and, focus on his actual specific drills after that to maintain his strength and explosiveness. When you're dealing with older people, you want to definitely tempo it. If they're not trained at all, let's say they're a novice and a beginner, I love using eccentrics and isometrics for those, or a combination of both. They still feel like they got a great workout in, but you're also activating a lot of that muscle maybe they haven't activated for X amount of years. Kind of like you go take the book off the shelf and blow the dust off, right?
Yeah.
It's getting it fired up again, right? If you're working with an
100%.
intermediate, maybe add a little more variation or rotation in, or give them options. One of the things I do for myself now is I look at, hey, we got squat today. Okay, I had a really nasty back injury. I got front squat, safety bar squat, split squat, or back squat. If the back's feeling good, we're going to back squat that day, man. It feels great. If we're recovering from injury, like, my back got a little beat up in jiu-jitsu, we're going to hit the front squat today. We might even add some pauses in to make sure everything's firing correctly. It's okay as long as you train to the qualities that you need to train to stay healthy. And that goes back to that transition point of, hey, I'm transitioning from being a young 25-year-old stud throwing 4 plates in the bar to being old and trying to maintain health for jiu-jitsu and other stuff that I got going on if I want to go back and compete in it. If you go with a more advanced older person, let them choose. Give them an outline, work with them, give them advice, tailor back your coaching. They already know how to squat. They already know how to deadlift. Maybe they want to put up some numbers. Cool. Maybe we'll add in a little more low back prehab. Maybe we'll add in some Spanish squats for the knee health, right? Some backwards sled drags, right? So there's other stuff we can use in there that will inherently prep them for a heavier session, but also undulating the, the volume and intensity throughout the week. If we do that, we have our high days, keep those high, keep a moderate day moderate, and a low day low. And for your audience, it's like high days being what's going to hit your nervous system the hardest and make you the most fatigued.
Yeah.
Moderate being a moderate version of that. Maybe it's like 5x5 on a squat for a moderate day, as opposed to, the heavy day is 10 to 2 above 85%. And a low day could just be, hey, we're going for a run, 30-minute zone 2, right? Just as an example for your audience. And fluctuate that throughout the week. Maybe even dial back exercises. There's a number of ways you can train that on both sides of the equation. So hopefully that answered your question, and I'll long-winded fashion.
But no, it makes perfect sense because you kind of need that nuance, and that's why I love podcasts, because I can pick your brain when it comes to finding that those little bits and pieces that kind of make everything make sense. And the one thing when you're saying that as well, because we're starting to see, I think, a lot more people become, it's kind of weird. We're seeing a schism almost. Like some people are just becoming unhealthier and unhealthier as time kind of progresses. But I'm also seeing an older population that's starting to become wiser and wiser with all the information that exists now. And one of the things that I'm starting to see is that a lot of people that are now in their 50s, 60s are out there squatting. You know, they're not doing what their grandparents were doing back in the day. It almost seems like at 60, 70 back in the day, people would just drink, smoke, whatever. And they're like, all right, time for me to die. Not everybody, but for the most part, right? Whereas now we're also starting to see a small subset of the population that are really into biohacking, into taking care of their bodies and lasting for as long as possible. When it comes to working with somebody like that, would you say that they can still focus on performance even though they're getting up there in age? So somebody that's like 50, 60, but he's like, hey, I still want to compete in powerlifting competitions. I still may want to do bodybuilding competitions and stuff. How do I maintain my health, or how do you go about making sure that they are always in an optimal, I guess, situation at their age as they progress?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, yes, they can still do that. There are master classes for a reason, that
Yeah.
have, 50 years and older, and that's awesome to see. And it should be so encouraging to the youth. But at the same time, you want to do it appropriately. You want to go back to that kind of model I gave you for that older person, where if they're more advanced and know what they're doing, give them the variations they need for that day, proper programming, and let them hit it. Just make sure you're doing a lot of prehab and stretching. And I would argue a little bit more conditioning, especially if they're powerlifting as an example. And it's more strongman conditioning, man. Let them live longer so they can do more competitions and compete. That's another example how you can weave in some of that quote unquote health components for them. But then as far as, if they want to get to, say, running a marathon, cool. How many days a week are you running? Are you working with a running coach? Or are you following something, a plan on Strava or one of these running apps that will break down a marathon training plan for you? Great. This week, what hurts? Next week, what hurts? Week 3, did you see any performance? Ask questions, poke. That's the best thing, because asking questions will give you all the data you need, man. And,
100%.
Yeah, and a little key for coaches, if your athletes are coming in, or any population worker that's coming in, and they're not talking with each other, they're probably a little fried, and they're just hopping on the foam roller, right? They're hitting the Theragun. Maybe they're just doing a little bit more dynamic stretching. They're probably a little fried. But if they come in and they're talking like a bunch of divorce moms at brunch, trust me, you're going to know they're going to be ready to train that day. It's a little secret that just little, because I've been doing this 10 years. Right? Little secret for the guys coming in for the readiness part. But yeah, overall, anything is possible within reason. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you, Conrad, to jump off a cliff and go fly, because we know, well, you're going to meet God. You're going to meet Jesus Christ real quick upstairs.
It's like, all right, so I'll be in heaven pushing these dumbbells, reaching PRs.
Rest in peace, dude. So, but those would be some examples, and I think it is good to have those older populations going to it, getting after it, and training appropriately for sure.
Yeah. And another thing that I kind of want to dive into a little bit too is like when it comes to TRT for somebody that's in their 50s and 60s, because I mean, there's people that are starting to take it at younger ages, which I think is kind of stupid. In my opinion, obviously it depends on who you are, what your situation is. But I'm like, dude, if you're like 20, I don't really think you need TRT, right? However, there are situations and people do make the argument that because, nutrition and everything is so bad that a lot of people have to then now take TRT, but I don't know. That's some, it's my opinion on it. If you're like under 30, I'm like, maybe not yet. However, when it comes to older populations that are taking TRT or might be taking HGH and stuff, when it comes to performance, do you push them a little bit harder? How do you go about, does your approach change at all? Like, how does that kind of look like for you?
I think it just goes back to that readiness question, right? Are they ready or are they not today? How are they feeling today? Have they recovered from the previous day? Are they coming in from a weekend on holiday where they're binge drinking in Ibiza? This is an example, right? And I'm speaking from personal experience on that, but it is one of those situations you have to address. So after that, if they come in and they still want to train hard and they're looking good, let them deviate from the training plan a little bit. One of the best things I've ever seen with people who are older and maybe they're on TRT or HGH or God knows what drug is I'll just say, hey man, that rep looked too easy. Let's say you're at 85% for the day. It was moving like butter. Looks great, right? We're going to add 5 to 10 more pounds or, 1 to 2, 3 kilos on each side of the bar and see how you perform. And that's fine. But I find the populations that I've worked with that have definitely been on drugs, whether they admitted it or not, did perform and recover better at a astronomically higher rate, which let me be harder with the training program, prescribe more harsh methodologies for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the one thing that I remember there was a guy that I know personally, right? And he's a professional MMA fighter, and he told me, he's like, "Yo, man," he's like, "there's no way you can be in the sport without taking all kinds of performance enhancement
Oh
drugs."
yeah.
He's like, "You just got to know how to mask it." And I'm like, "Really? You
Mhm.
guys are all?" He's
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, dude." He's like, "You really think?" And I remember, and I know since you do jiu-jitsu, you ever seen Andre Galvao?
I've seen all of them, dude.
Bro,
There
he's
are Gordon
fucking massive.
Ryan. They
Yeah,
showed Gordon
Gordon
Ryan
Ryan.
before when he's on drugs, and right after when he's definitely not, and it's just like weather
Yeah,
difference on his body. If you ever want a good interview to watch the Chael Sonnen interview when they talk about his first time he was going to fight John Jones. I think it's on
yeah,
ESPN, or it's a clip that went around my Instagram feed. I saw it 2 days ago. Wish I'd saved it. I'll just send it to you now. But they were saying, like, how did you feel about fighting John Jones? He says sometimes you're a lamb going to slaughter in the ring, but he said the craziest thing is, for as much drugs as I was doped up on, so was John, and I could just
yeah,
feel it when he gripped me, and everyone was so shocked to hear that. And he said the same thing you did. Do you really think you can be in this sport
yeah,
and not take drugs sometimes to get through with the
yeah,
pain, the heel hooks, the arm bars, the takedowns, the 6 hour a day training camps, like you name it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
And to your point too about harsh methodologies, I think there's nothing more harsh than MMA or kickboxing, or
Hmm.
obviously jiu-jitsu too. It's kind of like, yo, man, I see some of those rolls and guys getting like, I'm like, yo, man, your shoulder was about to pop. He's like, no, I'm fine. I'm like, yo, that's
No, I'm
pop. Like,
good.
there's
I'm
no
good,
way.
bro.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
good. I'm good,
like,
dog.
what? Yeah. And I'm like, people just recovering like nobody's business, and Buddy's 45. But then again, his traps are coming out of his ears. So I'm like, that's a telltale sign, right?
Yeah.
But
Abs
it's
are
one of
just
those
protruding
things.
out.
Yeah, man. I'm like the Donald Wall, like Gordon Ryan to me. I'm like,
Hmm.
whoa, dude, like you look like a bodybuilder that does jujitsu.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
But one of the things that kind of and the reason why I bring this up is I actually had a conversation with Dr. Alexander Hutchinson, right? And he's actually involved with the non-tested games, right? So they're doing this thing where it's like all the PEDs are allowed, right? Essentially. But he was talking about recovery and how he believes that number one, like you should almost make that separation between like performance on the day of versus recovery protocols. What's
Mhm.
your take on recovery, and what are some of the protocols that you would recommend, illegal or not, that you kind of think work pretty well when it comes to, doing your best in sports and recovering in the fastest and
Mhm.
best way possible?
Yeah, so I'm going to touch on only the legal ones because I don't know enough about the illegal ones to speak on that fully. I'm sure you could
Yeah.
find the Russian scientist from that documentary Icarus who would be
Oh,
glad to
dude,
talk about that.
great. Yeah.
Great documentary for anyone who hasn't seen it that's listening to this podcast right now. I would recommend sleep first and foremost at the base of the pyramid. If you're not
Mhm.
sleeping, you're not going to recover. I'm sorry, you can't come into the weight room off 3 hours of sleep with the best diet and best training plan in the world. Then, secondly, in the middle of the pyramid, you look at your diet. Okay, maybe we don't eat the Popeyes chicken, right? Maybe we don't get that McDonald's Big Mac, right? We get lean chicken, we get some rice, we get some veggies in us. Maybe we get a protein shake and a smoothie if we can't find a meal. We're on the go and it's our second meal of the day, right? So from there, then you actually look at the training plan. I always tell my guys right now, doing something is better than nothing, right? Doing something that is planned out, whether it's for you or for somebody else, is better than that something and that nothing beneath it, right? And then doing something specific to your needs, goals, and training equipment is going to be the best part for you guys at the top of the
Yeah.
pyramid, right there. And then obviously having that coach know, hey, I can't squat and deadlift Conrad in the same day, or his CNS is going to be fried going into
Right.
the workout tomorrow. And now any other stuff we're doing is going to be ruined potentially. And some guys can do great with that. Some guys can't. But that would be how I look at the pyramid of it. But
Yeah.
sleep at the end of the day is the most important quality to look at for recovery. And I guarantee you, anyone who's like, oh, coach, I sleep 8 hours a night. Okay, is it good sleep, or were you staring at your phone before bed for an hour doing
Mhm.
scrolling through Instagram? Is it a good diet, or were you out cheating on your diet that day? That's fine. I believe in the 80-20 rule for dieting. 80% good, 20%
Mhm.
go to the bar, get that tequila soda or whatever you want, man, and go have a ball. And I get it. But you should always be looking at, how can I recover for the next session come Monday, come Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah. Yeah, and I completely agree with you there too, man. Like I've had it where I know I've done workouts where it's like, yo, technically I'm fried. I did deadlifts, I did squats. I'm like, technically, I was going to sleep exhausted, but for some reason it's like, hey, I got to sleep for like 10 hours straight. Beautiful sleep. You get up the next day, you feel refreshed. Then there's other days where it's like, you sleep for 4 hours and you're like, I'm just going to do a light workout. And you're like, why am I even
Mhm.
here? I feel like shit, and then you're just ready to leave as soon as you show up.
Yeah, and some of the best things that I do for all the tactical guys that I work with now in this side of the field that can even be applied to general populations, you can go through and have an option week saying, okay, I went out binge drinking this weekend, slept like crap Saturday night. Sunday I was recovering, getting the alcohol out of my system and ate like garbage. I'm just going to come in, do my zone 2 cardio today and some really light intensity, higher volume work, right? Maybe we even drop back some of the volume even with that. Maybe Tuesday
Okay.
we go back to that moderate, and Wednesday is going to be our high day where we eat those 10 sets of 2 that I mentioned earlier in this
Yeah.
episode. But that could be something that could be applicable for those people that want to go do that, or maybe even not maybe have even been out, right? It could have just been their kid, they just had a baby and their kid kept waking them up throughout the night, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a dad, but man, I've seen a lot of new dads recently, and let me tell you, that sleep deprivation gets real. So
Yeah, dude.
those are just some examples they can take practically and run with.
100%. I mean, and that's the thing too. Like when I first had my kid, I just stopped working. Well, I actually take that back. On my second son, I didn't work out for about 2 years. I'm just like, no, I
Mm-hmm.
can't do this right now. Like I just need
Mm-hmm.
time off, and I just got fat. It's it is what it is. It came with the territory. However, it did come.
Dad bod rules all. Dad
Oh,
bod rules
100%.
all.
At that time, I was eating as much as he was. So,
Mm-hmm.
we're having a great time. But another thing that I kind of want to dive into with you is that I've heard a lot of different things, and I don't know. Over the years, I still do it. Other people kind of debate that it's useless. Static stretching versus static versus what's the other word? Man, I forgot.
Dynamic.
Dynamic stretching. Thank you. What's your take on stretching? Do you think that it's even worth it? Do you think you shouldn't do it? What's your take on it?
My thought process always goes back to what is tried and tested and true. I
Mm-hmm.
have seen what happens when I don't stretch, especially as I get older, after a workout. Like, let's just state the obvious for science, right? You do your dynamic before you work out, you do static after. And the reason for that is because the dynamic is going to augment your CNS, increase its output, and increase your ability to produce force, power, you name it. But static stretching at the end of the workout starts activating the rest and digest side of your nervous system, getting that muscle belly that's already warm in that case to lengthen and actually go to that full length and hold. That's the best time to train it, right? So as far as people saying it's not worth it, is it high on the priority list is the better question I ask. Are your guys that you train, are they going to have a better time, or sorry, more ROI would be the better way to put it?
Mm-hmm.
Doing static stretching for 20 minutes at the end of the workout, or finishing with their conditioning for the day? What is more applicable to that goal? What is more specific? So that client who might have sciatica, maybe we do our 5 or 6 exercises and we got 20, 30 minutes to stretch out and the PT gave us some extra stretches to do. That's where static stretching could actually come in handy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you have an athlete and they're already mobile, they're already flexible, they're already fast and explosive, we may just want to stay keeping them pushing forward, right? As
Mm-hmm.
like, why stop the car when it's rolling? Why change?
Yeah.
For what? Right? So those are 2 examples on both ends of the spectrum of when it could be useful, when it could be useless.
Mm-hmm. No, that's super interesting. It makes perfect sense. Like for me, I find that it's always based off of who the individual is
Mhm.
and how it does it hinder or does it help, right? Like that's kind of the way I just look at the end of the day. Like if you do some basic static stretching before and you like it and it's semi helpful, or even if it's just a psychological thing that helps the person do better, don't take
Mhm.
it out. By all means, kind
Yeah.
of keep it.
Yeah.
However, this is something that does make a lot more sense too, where it's almost like why people do yoga post workout, right? It's almost
Mhm.
like I just want to relax and
Mhm.
really calm down after a workout, because that's the thing. It's like people talk about being charged up. You're still firing on all cylinders and you get into your car, you throw some tool on, and next thing you know, you want to kill people because you're still thinking about your 1 rep max. It's a horrible situation where it's like if you're able to stretch, just relax, maybe put on some Bob Marley. It
Mhm.
helps you to just kind of like lean into it and just kind of ease out of the workout as well, I find.
Yeah. Yeah. And traditionally, it just depends on the individual, man, just like you said. there are clients who I'll program it in for them because it just keeps them coming back, and that's fine. Nothing wrong against that. And if you want a client coming back, or you're in a business model where that's important, and maybe you're on salary, like myself or other coaches, that could be useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the thing is too, sometimes people just kind of need that space, and it's almost like this guy's gonna force me to stretch. It's something that I enjoy doing, but I never do. It's almost beneficial. Like I'll just sign up so I can get some time, way out of the house and spend an hour doing something that I truly enjoy and is actually better for my health. But
Absolutely.
another thing that I kind of wanted to, and this is more nutritional based, but carbs. You mentioned it earlier, right? That, in America, everybody thinks carbs are evil. When it comes to training somebody, let's say specifically an athlete that's going into a game, what does a carb consumption kind of look like? And what are your go-to carbs in that situation?
So if they're pre-game, let's say, you're going to look at some, I would say, carbs that are going to be beneficial for them: rice, veggies, fruits. Specifically, you need to ask an RD which ones are going to be better for you. It's a registered dietitian for your viewers that don't know. They're in pretty much every major hospital around the world they can go to and get that checked out. But then if they're in the middle of a game, I remember when I was at Miami, because it's scorching hot down there. For the people that listen, that are international, listen to this. The height on average is 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, or about 95 to 100 and some degrees Fahrenheit, right? So in the middle of the game, you can't give them a huge meal, right, downing all this water the whole time, right, because their body's burning through it. They still need sugar at the end of the day. So maybe we give them a small pack of Gushers, or a really tiny, mini candy bar to spike up that glucose going directly into the brain. Is that the best nutrition for a mom or dad that has, let's say, heart disease or any kind of cardiovascular issues or high blood pressure? Probably not, right? But for an athlete who's performing at a high level, that's a little cheat code you can do. Pre-game peanut butter jelly, still a staple. I'll stand by it, man. Right? As a former athlete, I lived and died by that. So those are just some very practical examples they can take home. But both sides of the spectrum are correct if applied in the appropriate manner.
Yeah, and to your point too, it's almost like you want something light, effective, and just gives you that massive spike right from the get-go. You're not looking for those slow digesting carbs in that situation. Maybe an hour, maybe 3 hours ahead of time, sure. But you don't really
3-4
want to be
hours at a
packed.
time,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, no, you don't want to be running around there with like half a thing of pasta in your stomach, and you're like, oh, dude, I feel lethargic and slow.
Trust me, man. I've gone through jiu-jitsu with a whole carbonara pasta in my stomach at 30
Oh,
minutes, 40 minutes before, and let me tell you, it just felt heavy and slushy. Let's just leave that one there.
yeah. Well, hopefully nobody pinned you in any compromising positions that could have led to, exploding out of an
Well,
orifice, right?
we were fortunate to keep taking the top mount during that time period, but man, it was a battle. It was a battle, my friend.
I could imagine, because yeah, like legit, it's almost like you want to make sure nutrition's always on point for whatever it is that you're doing. And going back to that, when carbohydrates are mentioned as bad, do you find that that's mainly because of the high processed carbohydrates that we eat in North America versus the rest of the world?
I would say yes. And I think it's also, too, because of the volume we eat in America as opposed to Europe. Some Europeans will have one meal a day, and it's so nutritious, they're sustained for the entire day, maybe with like a coffee before. There's always like that running joke of, oh, in Europe, we have just a cigarette and a coffee for breakfast. And, we go have one giant meal and that's that. And there is some truth to that. It's not everything, but maybe twice a day. But I would argue, yes, that is the correct. It's the frequency we eat, the volume we eat, and what we eat at the same time. Like going back to that example where I told you I lost, 6 kilos coming out here? Unreal. Like it blew my mind, the difference. And I was eating foods that typical American would be like, how are you eating that and still losing weight?
Yeah.
It's what's in it. If you look at the food between, even in McDonald's in the UK, right, or in Italy or Spain, and look at the ingredients in America, certain countries in Europe have banned 9 or 10 of the ingredients we have in the American food. So just let that sink in as food for thought.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember reading about the dye that they would use for KD, so Kraft dinner. And I think we're in North America, it's orange 5, if I'm not mistaken, but it's one of these dyes that's highly cancerous, highly toxic, helps to cause obesity, load of microplastics, obesogens, like you name it. It just seems like we're running the gamut of like, hey, everything that's not good for you, let's throw it into the food supply.
Hey,
But
and that's America. We need profit at the end of the day over everything else, and mass production gets you that.
And that's a sad part about it because it just seems like, okay, we're making money, but we could probably make money in a way that's better or almost more, well,
Mhm.
maybe not sustainable, but in a way that I think a lot of people are willing to invest into themselves in the future. But if you were to look at the population and say, hey, you know what? I got to put these guys on a different standard diet because right now this food pyramid is just not it. I got to change certain things up. What would be some basic parameters that you'd kind of just switch around in regards to like the foods? Well, I guess like the day-to-day nutrition for
Mhm.
most Americans.
Good quality whole food, man. Right? Get away from the sugar. It's okay. Put it down. Right? Get some good complex carbs in you. Right? Stuff like stuff that's going to make you last longer. Not these simple quick carbs like you think candy.
Mm-hmm.
Fruits, veggies, heavy. Throw in a lot of lean meat, chicken, steak, even some turkey, fish, maybe tuna is like one of the big examples you see.
Yeah.
Start tracking your protein intake throughout the day. That's a big thing. That to me was one of the reasons I couldn't put on muscle when I was younger. And I look back at myself and I just want to smack my head against the wall, But that was a big thing. Like, did you get the 200 grams of protein you need today to
Mhm.
maintain or increase your muscle mass based on the body weight you are at right? It's a pretty simple calculation. It's not that simple if you want to really dial it in with a
Yeah.
registered dietitian, but as a general rule of thumb, you can go to Google and find that information pretty easily. I'd also eat a little more frequently and have a less full plate, right? The
Mhm.
smaller portions, more frequently, keep that metabolism up and running. Heavy emphasis on higher protein intake from it.
Yeah. And honestly, with the higher protein intake, I always find that for myself, it's like, dude, I don't feel as hungry. It's
Yeah.
like, I just don't, I'm like, all right, I'm good. I got my veggies, I got my chicken, got my
hmm
steak, whatever the case may be, and I'm good to go.
You would be surprised how much eating is social if you really try and scale back
Yeah.
from it. You like your friend texts you, "Hey man, yo, we're going to the bar, watching the game, or have some dudes over, throwing some steaks on the grill." You're not even hungry. Be like, "Yeah, I can go for a steak," right?
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
social thing too.
Well, that's the actual saying of it is just like, yeah, I could eat. It's like, are you really hungry though? And I think that's kind of another thing that's leading to why so many people are getting obese is that those signals are crossed up, man. Those signals are not being sent to the brain. The brain's just
hmm
like, I don't know if I should release insulin, keep it, suppress it. I have no idea what's going on here.
hmm
It almost seems like we're just living in a storm of our own stew, right? That is not good. And it's unfortunately something that we created for ourselves. So
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting in that you go to another country and you're almost able to just change your perspective from being around people who don't even know what you're talking about when it comes to like processed food. Like, what does
Oh
that kind of
yeah.
look like?
Oh, it's insane if you talk to the local people that are, in the town I live in right now. They are just like, we cannot believe Americans even let this happen in their society.
Yeah.
We can't believe that you guys do this to yourselves for the sake of what? For bad health, big profits for certain people. And
Hmm.
there's some arguments to be made on the profit side for certain things, but at the expense of your own people's health, no, I don't think there's ever a good argument to be made.
No, not at all, man. And the thing is, ultimately, yeah, sure, some people can blame it on capitalism, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but we don't really need these toxins in here. I'm pretty sure they could just be replaced with something else. Like that almost gets into the
Mhm.
conspiratorial side of things, but that's a whole nother realm, right?
Hey
Because
man,
I'm
I'm gonna
just
save I'm
like,
gonna save that one for Joe Rogan. Don't worry, I
yeah.
got a lot. I got a lot of stuff, man. It all feeds itself. But we do love a good conspiracy theory, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's kind of like one of the things that I did see when I was like looking into that. It's like, why is the FDA one association? Like, why is the Food and Drug? Like, hold on, why are these things two like foreign entities? It's like it feels
hmm
like one's feeding the other in a weird way. You know?
Crazy, crazy how that
Yeah.
works.
But another thing that I kind of wanted to get your take on is supplements. Because you hear a lot about supplements, always coming down the pike. People are all like, at one point it was BCAAs or the new crave
Mhm.
or craze. And then, when people talked about, hey, protein is irrelevant, it's not needed, to now it's like, hey, you got to make sure you get your protein every day, to, hey, you need casein protein before you go to sleep. What's your take
Mhm.
when it comes to supplements for overall performance and just kind of like, give us the contrast too of like the athlete versus general population. What's actually necessary and
Mhm.
what's kind of like, you know what, that's a myth that you don't really need.
Well, I think once again it comes down to, like you said, what we want to get. The
Hmm.
biggest things we look at if you're an athlete are going to be probably some creatine intake.
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to have a little bit of bloating as a side effect, but it will increase your power development. right? You're going to probably put on a little more muscle mass during that time period. And on top of that, you'll be able to add a little more volume into your actual sets and reps and add a little more intensity as well. So that's going to increase your progression in your lifting career, athletic career, whatever it may be. Right. So I highly recommend that for anyone I work with that wants to take athletics or any kind of strength and conditioning role seriously. Whey protein, I think, is great. Obviously, I prefer whole protein over anything else, but you and I live busy lives. We're on the go. So let's go ahead and maybe get a protein shake, smoothie, whatever, maybe bring the blender into work, right? Whatever it takes to get that done. That's going to be huge. You know, I'm not as researched on BCAAs. I'll be honest. If I knew a little more, I could probably track that a little more, but that is one of the 4 supplements that has been heavily studied. And then the other one is caffeine. And caffeine is still a performance enhancer, but it does have some negative effects. Unfortunately, man, I got a little sweet tooth. My one true love in this world is a good old fashioned energy drink, for better or for worse. And that's I'm speaking, and I'm the teapot calling the kettle black here. We all have our vices. Some people, some people like drugs, some people like prostitutes, some people love alcohol. Mine is the good white monster at 6 a.m. when I get in sometimes, right? Back in the day, right? Or Bang Energy when that was still legal. Man, then you realize how bad that is for you.
Yeah,
luckily, luckily I've been good at scaling that back, right? But, I would say there's a certain level of caffeine that is helpful. There is a certain level of caffeine that now has bad side effects for you. So, for instance, if you're getting a headache, if you're feeling lethargic, if you're feeling a crack after having maybe 4 coffees in a row, drink some water, right? Let it dissolve in your body, right? Let it start processing through. Those are going to be some big solutions on that. But those are the 4 big tested ones. I just wish I knew a little more about BCAAs to give.
Yeah, no, I mean BCAAs, I think they're great, and I mean for me, I focus more on L-leucine specifically, just because it helps with like muscle recovery and stuff, right?
Yep.
And the thing is too, it's like to your point, you got to do your research and kind of know where you're at, what you're trying to do. Like if I'm trying to bodybuild, it's like I should probably focus on L-leucine and creatine, these different things that are helpful for me in this situation. And to your point too, when it comes to that power output, man, you can notice a difference when you're on creatine and when you're not. Yeah, so it's like one of those things that's like a legal. I don't know. That's a legal performance enhancer that anybody can take. It's like if it's not illegal, studied, it's good to go.
Well, yeah, man, I think anyone who is serious about lifting, bodybuilding, competitive endeavor, whatever it may be, and you're not on creatine, I think you're making a big mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, 100%. And then the other thing that I kind of wanted to get, your take on too is like certain minerals and vitamins as far as like maybe not like the sports supplements so much, but just what are some key like minerals and vitamins that you try to make sure that your athletes or even general population are, taking every single day?
Honestly, I don't know too much about that, but the one I really like is zinc because it helps you sleep.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's the biggest one, man. Now, I'm not saying overindulge or rely on it, but do use it to an extent if you're having trouble falling asleep. That's been a good one for me, at least in the past. But I also don't want to speak to something that I'm not fully briefed on or fully gone down the rabbit hole and found out, what's crap on this, what's right on this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to your point though, it's kind of one of those things like maybe it is something that's maybe it works for you, but you don't necessarily go recommending it for everybody. It's like, hey, you know what? Listen, it's an experience that, works for me and it may not work for you. Like one of the things that I experienced was ashwagandha. So I would take ashwagandha before going to bed. Is it necessary for every guy out there? I don't think so, right? There's certain guys that just don't need it. I'm not stressed out.
What was your experience with that, man? I'm actually curious.
So with ashwagandha, so the thing is, I was in my competition prep and I was looking for things that would just help me. It was kind of like testosterone support too, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I would take a couple of drops before going to sleep, and I just found that it really helped to take the edge off because I was really stressed out. Like I was thinking about food as soon as I woke up, and I was going to sleep thinking about food. All I could think about was food at that time, but it was like the last 4 weeks, and I was really trying to go from like 180 down to like 174-ish. And I mean, I usually walk, like right now, I'm like 192, 193. So I'm generally pretty lean, but to get super lean, it's almost like you really got to push your body into the trenches. And in doing so, I found that ashwagandha was super, super helpful with that. The other thing that I found that was also very helpful to your point too is zinc. And actually I took moringa for a bit just because I don't know, we had it here and it was supposed to be good for like, I believe it was helping to absorb the zinc that you would take in along with other things as far as like the micronutrient profile kind of went. And I found that it was awesome, man. It was super helpful. That combination kind of helped me get through it. And my favorite supplement was probably L-carnitine. Even though I've heard a lot of people kind of say it's not that effective unless you inject it, I found it was super helpful. Really loved it, but that was my experience with it.
And then once again, it goes back to knowing your body and trying and slowly adjusting as you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the thing is, it's almost like some people will hear something, they'll load up on it. Like I remember I had this guy that I was, helping out. And I remember he told me, he's like, I took 15 scoops of creatine and it did nothing. And I'm like, that's not the way it works, dude. Like, I'm like, dude, like
15 scoop?
yeah, 15 scoops one day.
Oh, brother.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, you only need the 2 small scoops. Don't even do the recommended amount. Get your 5, what is it, milligrams or grams of it, and you're good to go.
I think it's like 5 grams. It's a small
yeah,
scooper. You take that, you know.
but the companies, for anyone listening, will try to get you to say, oh, you need to do this 2 to 3, 4 times a day because they want you to go through it faster, so you need to get more.
Yeah.
5 grams is fine. That is a standard thing that works. From what I am tracking and what the research shows, the rest does not help you. It is only just you wasting away precious creatine you can use for your second and spread it out more.
100%. And it's one of those things, again, it's like, when it comes down to it, too, because supplements are so unregulated, too, I find that a lot of people just squeeze in whatever they can, make as much money as they can, and then they're like, all right, cool, well, you need another one.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%.
What's one of your favorite stories when it comes to working with a client and really getting them up to speed and just really helping them really reach their goal? Because you had mentioned that right at the onset, right? Like defining the why. What was one of your favorite stories when it comes to like a client transformation where it's like, hey, maybe he came in super weak, couldn't walk, or walk well, but what's one of those transformations that you can just kind of recall?
Man, so I got one really good one for you. Okay, so this dude comes into our weight room at the time, our strength facility for these specific units that I'm working with currently, and he just walks in. He's just a type A killer. He just looks like he's just a mean dude. That guy just walks in. He's buff. He's got a mean look on his face. He's slapping the chalk around, right? And he comes up to me and just says, "Hey, you." Like no intro, no nothing, right? It's like, I've heard you're a good strength coach. I got these problems going on. Sciatica on one side, couldn't turn his neck to the left more than 10 degrees, radiating pain down his trap. Former football player at the Division I level, was just really struggling with a lot of back pain and a lot of other issues going on that his job put him. So we work with the physical therapists, the athletic trainers, the doctors on staff there, and we basically, I go to them and say, hey, what can I not do with this individual? Where is my parameter that I'm looking for, right? Don't go beyond X point. Cool. We got those. We built a program for him. And then I sit down and ask him, hey, man, I want you to help build this with me. What do you want out of this? For reference, this dude is 38 years old, just had a second born son at the time, was still needing to perform his duties to the highest capabilities, and was kind of viewed as a kind of a mid-tier to upper tier leader within the particular unit he was working with. So we worked with him for, I believe it was 48 to 50 some weeks straight, right? Whether it's 3 days a week, 2 days a week, 5 days a week, he is getting in and modifying the training plan as he goes, his busy schedule. This man put up more weight. He squatted over double body weight at 38 years old, deadlifted in the 500s, right? Well above double body weight, clean and jerked, over 245, I want to say, double-digit pull-ups, massive conditioning improvements, no sciatica anymore, could turn full range of motion in the neck, no pain. And he could perform his job even better than when he could probably when he was 26, 27, 28, right? So let that sink in from a performance side. But the real reason he wanted to do it, you'll never believe this. He just said, Coach, I want to pick up my son again.
Wow.
Crazy, right? And this dude went from being, hey, you, to, hey, man, what letter of recommendation can I give you? How can I help you? Because you've helped me so much. So that is a real powerful story, especially, man, like, I'm not a dad right now. I'm 30 years old. I got an amazing girlfriend, and, we'll see where things go. But if we ever do have kids, I want to make sure that if I have a son or daughter, I can pick them up, go play ball with them in the park. One of the coolest things my dad did is he would just feed me the basketball, man, or they'd hoop in the backyard, right? I want to be able to do that no matter the age, right? Like, those are important things. And I'm sure you can relate to that being a dad yourself.
Yeah. No, 100%. It's kind of like that motivation factor of like, hey, I can deadlift 5 plates, whatever. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, it's like right now, for example, I mean, my son's playing corner, so he's practicing just tackling me. If I was a weak father, I wouldn't be able to like, let him just go
Oh
full
yeah.
force. Granted,
Mm-hmm.
he's a
Well
little bit
said.
of a string bean, so we got to put on some muscle mass. So,
I love
he's really
that.
trying to like aim low and stuff. I'm like, all right, cool. But if I wasn't in shape well enough, like it is
Mhm.
a very scary thing that I see. And it's also a very motivating thing that I see for a lot of dads when they kind of reach that point where it's like, dude,
Mhm.
I can't lift up my toddler, right?
Mhm.
Like that to me, it's scary, but it's also a great place for people who are in that position to be like, all right, I need to come to terms with the fact that I am not where I want to be at. And if I come across somebody that can help me reach that, dude, I mean, you just change their lives forever, right?
Yeah, and the biggest thing I can tell people is, man, outsource your strength and conditioning, coaching, sports performance, tactical performance, whatever that looks like. Outsource it to a professional because you're going
Mm-hmm.
to make mistakes along the way. And I guarantee you, these people will help you reach a point where they're not making any mistakes because they've already made it themselves for themselves.
Yeah,
So why go down that rabbit hole? Not spend the proper money to solve the issue
yeah,
and try to do it yourself because you're the tough alpha male person, whatever term you want to throw around nowadays, right? It's not worth it. Hire a professional or at least get a consultation.
100%. That's the one thing that age has taught me. Like when you're younger, your ego is a little bit bigger. Then you get older and you're like, wait a minute, I don't know everything. I'm not superhuman. It's like I'm pretty sure I continue down this road, I'm gonna break everything.
You ever, you ever,
So
yeah, you ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
is that I've heard of the Dunning-Kruger personality test, I think.
It was the one where it's like as you're younger, you think you know everything in the world.
Oh,
At some
dude.
point in your life, you get humbled. You realize you know absolutely
Absolutely.
freaking
Yeah.
nothing,
Yeah.
and then you go up, and now it's like I'm kind of learning. But
Yeah.
that's where you actually are quote unquote an expert when you realize like training methodologies. I thought I
Yeah.
was the shit, man. I thought I was the goat. I was killing it. And I suddenly get in a situation like, oh, school never prepped me for this.
Yeah.
What do I do? So you have to go back to the textbooks. You got to research, call their coaches, whatever that may be. But you get humbled very quickly. And I'm glad it happened to me at a young age because now I can thrive and give that information away to coaches or athletes or whoever comes my way, even on this episode, right? Just some
Yeah.
stuff we've gone over. You'll never know everything. Assume it is always, it depends is the famous one. But like whenever I do that, I try to give two examples or both scenarios can be true in each of said examples. So
Yeah.
those are things that you have to look at as well.
No, 100%. And to your point too, it's like, if people are willing to invest in other things in their lives, but they're not willing to invest into actually being like living their life to their full potential and performing at their
Mhm.
best at all times in the body that you have, I don't see the point of living, man. Like I think health is number one. And I'm like, if you lack those basic kinetic abilities, it's like, dude, why would you? I mean, I'm not saying you should commit suicide, but I'm just saying,
Mhm.
like, why would you want to continue living that life if you're constantly limited? Like, hey, I can't turn
Mhm.
left. Like, what are you, Zoolander? Come on, man. Like,
That's solid. That's a great reference
yeah.
right there. That's good. That's good.
I
I,
can't
I,
turn left.
I can't turn left. No, but it is it is sad. Like, what is the point then?
Hmm.
Jordan Peterson talks about the best thing about life is you're all in,
Yeah,
right? You have no choice in the matter, so you might as well live the greatest story possible, and that includes reaching your highest potential. So I think a lot of
100%.
people need to look at it, man. And to me, that potential is like, how much can I grow the side business I'm doing right now? What can I do in my current job? How
Hmm.
much writing and content can I produce? How many podcasts can I hop on before 2025 starts? How many
100%.
people can I connect with and help out and shake hands with?
Hmm.
It's funny enough, one of the guys who I called who worked at Gonzaga Prep, Coach Marcus Taylor, if he's listening, he's one of the best dudes, was one of 5 coaches to give me a call back after I sent out like 300 emails after being a
Wow.
GA, right? Just because it's a small field, right? And nobody wants
Mhm.
to help the next guy up. He's one of 5 coaches that called me back. To this day, we still stay in touch, right? He has done phenomenal things at Gonzaga Prep in Washington, D.C. And I was in London with my girlfriend at the time, or sorry, now, currently, excuse me. And he wound up DMing me saying, yo, dude, you're in London? I'm like, yeah, man, I'm here. He's like, dude, I'm here for the Bears game because the NFL does some games
Yeah,
every
yeah, yeah, yeah,
year.
yeah.
right? And I'm like, oh, bet you want to link up? We got some drinks, caught up. Turns out he's introducing me to some pretty high level folk that kids go to their school when they come out to where I'm currently at now. And it's just, once again, you never know where that one email, that one phone call, that one podcast, what we do today,
Yeah.
could lead. That could lead to another one and another one. Next thing you know, you're getting Sean Ryan, Lex Friedman, Joe Rogan, Nelk Boys, all these big platforms, right?
Yeah.
But it starts with one. And what I find is a lot of people don't want to take that risk. They don't want to live life to their full potential. They don't want to experience and tell the greatest story ever told. And that's their story.
100%. Yeah, dude. And the thing is, too, it's like, it's funny. I was just doing another podcast talking about fear. And this dude that I was talking to was talking about how we need fear at times to almost be the catalyst that takes you to the next level, but you should not be stopped by fear. You should use it as a sign of like, okay, I'm scared, but I should continue doing this and I should continue moving forward and I shouldn't stop. I shouldn't paralyze by fear. It's kind of like, even if I feel that uncomfortability, I should continue moving forward and I should always work on building on what I have and work on progression throughout your entire life.
You know, and it's funny, the communities I've worked with in the past, whether it's fire, police, whoever, they run to the fear, man. They run to what most people run away from, right? Let me rephrase this. When you get over your fear and run towards it and go into it, you realize real quick, that's where all the success is.
Yeah,
if I'm scared in basketball to dribble left, I got to start working that, man. It's going to come a time where a dude is just going to keep forcing me right and stealing the ball. Or if I'm scared to, write an article for a blog post, what I did, my first one, man, I was sweating bullet. So I was so scared because strength and conditioning is such a critical industry of each other.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, man, I'm in a rough spot right now. I'm kind of going through it. What do I have to lose? I tried, they didn't. Suddenly that one article goes like, hey, you want to do another one? Oh, yeah, sure. There's another $100 coming in the bank out with one article by this date. Oh, sweet. Now, 5 years later, I'm a subject matter expert for a writer who writes in the UK and London for GQ, Men's Health, these bigger magazines. And it was crazy to look at that progress, but it started off by taking that risk.
100%. And it's almost like the same way that a portfolio works with like compound interest. It's like you have to invest into yourself and take that leap of faith. But it's kind of like that interest will never grow if you never buy into the stock of you. It's almost like you got to view yourself as a corporation, so to speak, and be like, all right, I'm going to invest in this guy. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to progress here and I'm going to continue to grow. And over time, you start to realize, like, you look back 5 years later, like, whoa, like that sure has changed.
Yeah. And one of the craziest things that I realized is that when you have either podcasts, writing, blog posts, books, textbook, maybe an interview on massive news network, right? Like MSNBC or Fox or CNN or whatever in the United States, or even anywhere people are located in the world, the BBC in London, you now stand out. You become searchable on Google. People can find out a lot about you, and that always gives you a competitive edge. Because if I go to the interview process and let's say me and 3 other strength coaches go in there, right? Athletic director, maybe tactical director, whoever looks up all 3 of our names. And we all, let's say for the sake of argument, had the exact same interview. All 3 of us are fantastic candidates. They can't choose. They Google the first 2 people's names, nothing really comes up. They Google my name and they see everything coming down. Who are they going to hire? What's the difference maker? Because that's verbal proof. That's visual proof. That's written proof of all the communication abilities and experience to be able to convey and tell a story. If you can learn how to tell a story or convey ideas from complex to simple, you will rock in your career.
100%, man. But hey, this podcast has to come to a close, even though I could keep you here all day, man. But I just looked at the time, like, wow, okay, that went by fast.
Love it, man. Love it. No, dude, best conversations are the ones that feel like they just flew by.
Yeah, man. But you got to tell us, where can we find you? Links, all that good stuff. Let us know before you go.
Yeah, so for my Instagram, it's coach_Telegadas. I'll be able to provide it to you after the episode. We can put it in the description. For the links, we do 3 sports science. Me and Dr. Chris Myers run a small business over there, and we help a ton of people out, whether it's triathlon training. If you're working with a tactical unit, we can help you out, or even sports performance, or just living everyday life and you want to be an athlete for the rest of your life. We can help you out on that. And I'll put that link in there as well. And my Coaching email is Coach Kosta Telegadas, all one word, at gmail.com.
Perfect. Perfect. Now make sure all the links are going to be included into the description. And guys, we'll see you in the next episode. Costa, this was a blast, and I can't wait to have you on again, man.
Man, I can't wait for it, Conrad. It's been an absolute blessing. Thank you.
Perfect. And again, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Stay tuned till then.